About 2.5 years ago, I was standing on the very spot where these words were uttered. On the ground is a very ancient, simple mosaic in the ground, there at the point where the words were uttered, and there is a simple design, an ichthus, fish in Greek, which also gives you Jesus Christos, Jesus Christ, Theouios, the Son of God, and Saviour, Sotir, which was an early Christian symbol and still with us to this day, the fish. The rock which the Lord used to place these barley loaves and fish on is still there, reduced in size to a small slab still standing just about because of the desire of the Moors, the Islamic bloc, to more or less stamp out traces of certain things which are embarrassing to them. They also started on the Holy Sepulchre itself later on and started to demolish that, which explains why even now you only have a mangled Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem itself and a bit of the angel stone, because the angel stood or sat there, but now we only have a trace of it. That is to explain that they were very precious to these pilgrims, but they salvaged them, and there was in each place an unbroken tradition that this is where this and this and this happened. So this is the spot. But it didn't stop there. The Christian centuries have witnessed this miracle over and over again, and we're able to locate them more easily than before through modern means. I mean the internet. I was preaching on this miracle a few weeks ago, and the father of my little altar boys there, John, backed up the sermon with a very interesting bit of recent YouTube, which was a testimony I wasn't aware of. I was aware of others, but this one I hadn't seen, and it's extremely powerful. It's how, when they were down in some country of great poverty, they were distributing the limited amount of clothing they had brought with them from Europe, but they saw that the one case they had, kept on filling up, kept on filling up, kept on filling up, and they had so much they didn't know where to put it. And it was something that they just reported on YouTube as such in all its simplicity. But it's something not far away from us. In 1986, I was in France, and I was sharing the life of one of these new charismatic semi-monastic communities which was being born at that time in France, and I was with them on a huge convention in Ars, where the Curé Vaz used to live, in the south of France, Jean-Marie Vianney. And I was listening to what they were saying. I noticed their system. There was no tariff for those who came, and they were coming by the thousand from all over France. I mean by the thousand. And they only gambled on Providence, a risky business when you're handling between 7,000 and 12,000 people over a fortnight. So the previous year this had happened, and I heard it from what they were saying to each other. They had calculated roughly the type of numbers they were expecting, but it was vastly greater than they had anticipated. They therefore had a certain amount of, in practice there were chicken legs, that kind of thing to give out. So all they could do was carry on with what they had. They started, they carried on, they carried on, they carried on, and still they were coming by the thousand, and they carried on. And lo and behold, when they had fed the not 5, but I'm not sure whether it was about 12,000, at the end there were so many of these chicken legs still coming out of nowhere, and I mean out of nowhere, that they had to distribute them to the nursing homes and clinics and hospitals in the whole area of that south of France, because they were still fresh, newly created. And I was listening also to things that were being said by these lovely people, and One thing I heard being said was this. It was in one of their houses, and the community, by the way, is the Pleasant Beatitudes. You may have come across them indirectly in Medjugorje. They're all over the place now. They wear the white and the brown over it. Sister Emmanuel is one of them. Well, this is the early stages then. They were still called the Line of Judah. And there they were in one of their houses, and each of their houses would have a specific ministry. And the specific ministry of this house they were setting up was going to be to help people who were suffering, I suppose, emotionally in their spirit rather than in their bodies. But they had medical staff. They were amongst themselves well-formed, trained doctors and so on, so they could do it professionally as well. But to do it properly and professionally as well, they had to have modern equipment. That was the extra bit, because they live on producing what they need on a daily basis, but for the extra things, the big bits of that kind, they gamble on providence, and that's what I'm coming into. It's a dicey business, apparently. So they had to have, by a certain deadline, a large, and I mean a large sum to pay off what they had ordered, all this recent equipment. Okay, what were they going to do? They prayed, and it wasn't coming, so they decided to show they meant business. And this was the bit that the Superior General clamped down on, because it shouldn't be happening, but they did. They decided to fast totally until the sum arrived. And so they started. And because there was no break for a meal, they started to make a complete spring clean of the whole house, and especially the kitchen, which was not being used. But there was nothing happening. And they were getting hungry. They carried on, knowing the Lord hadn't forgotten them. But still, nothing moved. They were getting empty. They carried on, and now they were starting to feel the pinch. Eventually, the doorbell rang, and they came to see who it was, and it was a good lady who brought them a basket full of strawberry and fruit. So they thanked her courteously and left her go away, but didn't touch it. They put it there in the kitchen and carried on with the prayer and the fasting, wondering what was going to happen. Eventually, the doorbell rang again, and they went eagerly to open it, wondering what it was this time. And this good lady came to the door and said, I know you're always in need of a few centimes, quelques sous. Le Seigneur m'a mis sur le cœur de vous donner ceci. The Lord put on my heart to give you this, a few bob. So she gave them this envelope, you see. So they were discreet and didn't say a thing in her face except, thank you so much, we'll pray for you. So they got to the kitchen and opened the said mysterious envelope. Wow! It was the exact sum to the last centime which they needed, as though there was some mysterious brain behind the signing of this check. Providence means vision beforehand. It's the basis of prophecy, because God sees, he's outside time, that this event and this cause will have a chain of effect. This cause will cause that effect, which will be the cause of that effect, which will be the cause of that effect, but he also sees the parallel sequence. If I put this effect from that cause and put this extra cause in the midst, I'll break that sequence, and we'll have this cause and effect, this cause and effect, this cause and effect, and that parallel cause and effect of time. He knows which one it will be out of the many, and therefore we have conditional prophecy. But he knows in practice which one it will be, so he can see pretty well where we're going to go. He can see also what accidents are ahead, and he can see also what might be the relative use of calling a person at this point rather than at that point further on, when in his knowledge they may be in a worse place spiritually and therefore eternally. So we don't know the whole story, he does. with regard to the miracle of this gospel, it's also a hint. Now, on the 30th, Joseph will be having his first encounter with the Eucharistic Lord, and this is an occasion to prepare for that, remembering that all these miracles vaguely linked with creating matter and transforming it, think of Cana, for instance, in Galilee, are all hints at the Lord's massive power. But also in our times we have even stronger hints, more accessible again than before because of modern means. There is a huge number by now of very good documentations on, for instance, Eucharistic miracles, analysis of blood and the like on YouTube. This is good use of the media. One learns a lot from a good selection of a documentary. It's like a library that one can actually manipulate well. Good use, mature use. And there one sees that same power of providence able just calmly and serenely to render the goods and to perform in public in such a way that nobody, and I mean nobody, can gainsay what is being said. And if he does, he's doing precisely what the Acts talks about, fighting against God. And what do? They raise their voice and put up a smoke screen of irrelevant arguments attacking some point which has nothing to do with it. That's how they get round it. But it's bad will, and the problem is on that level. I just want to touch on that point while I'm on it, and I'll finish with it because it's kind of important, because about half of you here are young. It's the question of this access that we have to knowledge and what we can actually take in a short time. This question of being able to manipulate, maneuver, use well, and yes, harness means of acquiring knowledge in a short time are things that we have to be in control of and not controlled by. Just a few months ago, I was talking to somebody like you. He was now already a student, university level, but he came out with this in conversation. I would have had a first had it not been for my Xbox. And he's a man of good family and actually practicing faith. He's a good lad. He's kept on to what he was given by the family, good farming background. And he honestly and sincerely was saying in our conversation, kind of amongst young people at table, he was saying what it was doing to him until he copped on. He didn't realize at first, but it was so addictive that he couldn't stop playing with it. And the attention given to it was such that he couldn't settle down to a book. He was too much hyped up to settle down to the dullness of a white page without anything to excite him. And his marks, because he was brilliant, suffered. My brother was also brilliant and went to Oxford, said to me in private one day, before my degree exams, he was warning me not to get into the same pitfall. He, when he was in Oxford, was singing. He used to compose songs and go round and sing them and also make records out of them. And he said, that's the bit that I suffered from, because when it came to the exams, he was trying to get a first and he knew he could, but he just said to me simply in Welsh, "Doesn't he ddim wedi gwneud y gwaith." I hadn't done the work. So it was too late to catch up in 6 weeks on what had also been going on, this talent he had of singing and composing. So that's not perhaps the temptation that most people have now, but the other things may well be. And it's worth realizing before one goes through life that this new bit is new to humanity and we're still children before it. We haven't learned how to master it because it's mastering us. And I've seen it. I look now around and I see how around, whereas when we were in college, it was part of the growing up exercise to know how to dialogue with each other, to be interesting in conversation, to look people in the eyes and just to be on an equal with them in conversation, able to talk to anyone about anything. Now I look at them and they're all in their bubble. They're all looking at this thing and not at each other. And it's a plague in student life. Student life is very rich, but this thing is devastating it. And I've heard it on the grapevine that students who have cop on know it and realise the damage it's done to their quality of life. Now just beware, because they're great blessings, these things. You can get an awful lot of knowledge in a short time without having to fill it with all kinds of encyclopedias. But be careful, because once you're online to the whole planet, and also to, yes, let's say it, the netherworld. Old Nick is in there too, and he comes up in the margins, in hard porno. Come this way, it's my part. And there he's got us, purity lost in a few seconds forevermore. Because what goes in, stays in, and sticks in, and attached is Old Nick.